and that people love using. So but it's either convert Twitter to that or start something new. Those are the two, but it does need to happen somehow.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because the price of Twitter is pretty high, and you've built a couple of companies, and some engineers like to come work for you, and you've now gone through the intellectual exercise of studying all this. If you're looking at the two choices now, fixing Twitter given all these problems, and maybe just starting your own version, which one are you leaning towards? Because I have watched you build a couple of companies, and the products have turned out pretty good. So is it easier for someone like you to just start from scratch? I mean,
it's certainly my default inclination is to start things from scratch. I'm not really, I don't buy things like there's still this sort of, like SpaceX was started from scratch. In the case of Tesla, it was like 5 people. There's still this guy, Everhard, who's the worst guy I've ever worked with, who tries to claim like sole credit essentially for creating Tesla. And if he's so damn great, why didn't he just go, create another car company when he was fired? But anyway,
well, that's a pretty good story.
Yeah.
I remember.
He's assassin.
But I remember having this conversation with you. We were having a conversation about the Roadster. I think I can tell this story.
Yeah.
I said, "How's it going, pal?" And you said, "Well, I got one problem. It turns out the Roadster parts and putting it together cost $190,000."
Yeah.
And I said, "I gave you $150 for number 16. So if you make 2,000 of these, you're going to lose $80 million." And you were like, "Yeah, or double that." They basically, the parts of the car cost more than they were selling it for when you were starting to get involved. It was disastrous.
No, I got involved well before that.
Well before that, yes.
I got involved when Tesla was nothing but a piece of paper. Let me be crystal clear. Crystal fucking clear.
Yeah.
No, they didn't bring me in either. I was gonna start an EV company with JV Straubel, and based on the AC propulsion T0. And when I asked AC Propulsion if it was okay to do that, they said, well, there's also some others who want to create an EV company, but have not created one yet.
Yes.
Would you like to join forces with them? And I said, okay, well, we'll do that. That was a huge mistake. JB and I should have just started the car company ourselves. Instead, we teamed up with Everhard, Topping and Wright. Big mistake. The actual moral error here was me trying to have my cake and eat it too, which is like, I just want to work on the technology and the product and have someone else be the CEO and sort of run the business operations, because I just like working on technology and product and design. And also I was like doing SpaceX, at the time, and our rockets were blowing up. So it seemed like, okay, this is like, I always wanted to do an electric car company. This is how I can have my cake and eat it too. That was a huge mistake and fundamentally a moral error. So in the end, I had to friggin' be CEO, and I didn't want to be, basically. But it's either that or the company's going to die. So we started with really just nothing, and the T0 prototype from AC Propulsion. That's the precursor to Tesla. To be 100% clear, once again, when we created Tesla, when I joined, there were no employees, there was no intellectual property, there was no prototype, there was no nothing.
Yeah.
To be crystal fucking clear.
And it almost bankrupted you. That sent you to the cliff of insolvency.
Yeah.
That was...
Yes, we were on the ragged edge of bankruptcy so many times it was ridiculous. And 2008 was one of the worst years, where basically GM and Ford, so GM and Chrysler, Ford almost went bankrupt, and trying to raise money for a startup electric car company in 2008 while GM was going bankrupt was difficult to say the least. People were angry that I even asked them for money. They're like, "Fuck you," and hang up. So the only way that Tesla actually made it through 2008 was a subset of the existing investors which includes like people like Antonio Gracias and Steve Jurvetson and a few other key people, Ira Ehrenpreis, who I hold a debt of gratitude to this day. And I put in all the money I had left, and they said everything, literally everything. I didn't even have a house, so this is my ex-wife at the house. So I was like staying actually in Jeff Skull's spare bedroom. But there was the subset of the investors would say, okay, if they'll put in as much as I put in, so I put in everything, and then we closed that round 6 p.m. Christmas Eve 2008. It was the last hour of the last day that it was possible, because after that people were like kept breaking for the holidays, and we would have bounced payroll 2 days after Christmas.
It was pretty.
That's doorstep.
I mean, it was an incredible moment in time, and people also forget at the time that the first 2 rockets SpaceX sent up didn't exactly make it to orbit. Like one of the first 3. Yeah, the first 3. And I remember having dinner with you at that time, and I asked you, "Hey, how's it going? I heard Gawker says you got 4 weeks of payroll left." And you said, "That's not true." And I said, "Thank God." And you said, "We have 2." And I said,
no, I mean, both SpaceX and Tesla in 2008, if we'd simply paid our suppliers on time, we would have gone bankrupt immediately.
Tell us actually.
It was a pretty crazy moment in time, because I also remember asking you we were having dinner at BOA, and I said, well, certainly there's got to be some good news. And you took out your BlackBerry to date the conversation. I don't remember it.
Oh, yeah.
And you said, "Don't tell anybody, Jake." I said, "No problem." And you showed me the clay version of the Model S.
Yeah.
The most beautiful car I'd ever seen. And I said, "Oh my God, it's stunning. How much is it going to cost?" You said, "I think I can make it for $50,000. I remember it was yesterday. I said, "If you make that car for $50,000, you'll change the fucking world." And you did it. And it
was a little more than 50,000, but
yeah, you did.
Let's ask about SpaceX.
Okay, well, that's about SpaceX, but I want to ask one more personal question. Has life gotten easier for you as these companies have hit scale, or has the complexity made life even more challenging? Because those early days, it was just fighting to survive. Nobody knew who you were anonymous, and it was really just about the work. And now, let's face it, you're the world's most famous guy, and everybody's watching everything you do, but these companies are also very big. So what's life like for you today? Are you enjoying what you're doing every day?
Well, I mean, it's somewhat of a roller coaster. So there are like good days and bad days, and there are always like crisis issues. And, like sort of, knock on wood, like we're not like facing, death in the face. Like it's definitely like quite stressful when like, death is like trying to eat your face off, and like the foam is like, just getting and like, right there, it's pretty stressful in that situation. So like, both SpaceX and Tesla have, significant cash reserves. So like, it's not we're staring death in the face. We could sort of see it over in the horizon, so I don't want to get complacent or entitled, because but if it's not like just sort of foaming at the mouth and gnashing, trying to eat your face off on a daily basis, that's certainly, we've moved on from that point, and hopefully never return. But there are a lot of issues that need to be. It's just like if you're a CEO of a company, the chore level is high, and if you don't do your chores, then the company goes to hell. And I hate doing chores, frankly. So who does? So that's the real. Like, there's a whole bunch of sort of personnel issues and legal issues and things that I don't find enjoyable to work on. But if I don't work on them, the company suffers. So it's more like just the sheer volume of work is insane. That's the and then go add to it with Twitter or something like that. So, I mean, honestly,
on your extra processor.
Yeah, I mean, I have a habit of biting off more than I can chew, and then just sitting there with like chipmunk cheeks.
Tell us a little bit about where we are at SpaceX, like how you fund the ability to go to Mars, but then also commercially still build a conventional space business domestically. I think this Russia thing was probably really good for SpaceX. If you want to just tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, the goal of SpaceX is to develop the technology that enables life to become multiplanetary and make humanity a spacefaring civilization, which I think is a very exciting, inspiring thing. And it's like one of those things where you can that I think just makes kids like be excited about the future. And we need things that are inspiring and exciting and make the future seem like it's going to be better than the past. Life can't just be about solving one miserable problem after another. It's got to be like what's inspiring and exciting. And I think that a future where we are a spacefaring civilization is one that we can all get excited about. And we can go out there and find out what's out there in the universe and what's the meaning of life, and where are the aliens, and hopefully they're friendly and that kind of thing. It's interesting. I do get asked about the aliens question a lot, and I've not seen any evidence of aliens. And I'll be the first to tweet about it or whatever if I see something.
I mean, you'll tell us if you find them.
I will tell you. I will definitely tell you if there's aliens. I think it would be quite helpful for if we found aliens. Like probably SpaceX would get a ton more revenue because people are like, oh man, aliens, we've got to upgrade our space technology pronto. Because what if they're unfriendly? It's like,
is the idea that you build basically the ability to do orbital cargo, take all those profits, launch Starlink, take all those profits, and move it all into building something that can get to Mars? Is that the kind of rough plan?
Yeah, pretty much. It's if there was like a three-slide PowerPoint, it would be pretty much as you described, which is develop rockets that are capable of taking satellites to orbit and crew to the space station. Basically servicing government and commercial space launch needs, and then build a global communication system in space. That obviously it does a lot of good for Earth, but by providing internet connectivity to the least served. Because a satellite system is really great for remote locations, and countryside or remote islands or places where someone's trying to cut off their internet.
As a prelude to a war, we take down the communication system, like in Star Wars. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like so it can be pretty helpful. Like I think Starlink basically I think is a sort of forceful grid in its own right by providing connectivity to the least served, or where they've got either no connection or a very expensive or poor connection. We're connecting a lot of schools, remote schools in Brazil right now. I'm actually going to be headed there to sort of kick things off. But they've got a lot of schools that have no connectivity at all. And in a modern age, how do you learn with no connectivity? I mean, you get, I guess, old textbooks and stuff, but it's really, you're at a huge disadvantage if you have no digital connectivity. So I think there's just a lot of good that Starlink can do just by itself, but then the revenue generated from Starlink is what can enable the creation of a permanently crewed base on the moon, which would be the next step from Apollo, which is like, let's just not go there for a few hours and then head back. Let's have a permanently occupied like science station on the moon. And we could also build some pretty epic telescopes on the moon that would enable us to learn more about the nature of the universe and figure out what's going on and maybe detect those aliens. Do
you think that there's enough profit in those businesses to fund all this, or do you need Wall Street and other investors to come share the load with you?
Is going to Mars a partnership with the government? Does it need to partner with governments to get there?
Well, I think technically it does not need to partner with governments, but of course, government support would be helpful. It's going to be very expensive to build a self-sustaining city on Mars. Like, in order for us to become multiplanetary in a way that's meaningful, the key threshold is at which point does the city become self-sustaining, such that if the ships from Earth stopped coming for any reason, and it could be any reason, it could be World War III, or it could be just civilization subsided and just gradually got decrepit or something. But if the ships stop coming, if the resupply ships from Earth stop coming to Mars for any reason, does the city still survive? And that's like really a large base of resources that are needed on Mars. You can't be missing any one critical ingredient. And you can think of this like there are these various great filters, that perhaps stop civilizations. And one of the great filters is, will we become a multi-planet species or not? Will humanity be one of those species that passes the great filter of going beyond one planet and being a multi-planet species? And this is certainly something we'll have to do at some point, because the sun is expanding and will eventually boil the oceans and destroy all life on Earth. So if you care about life on Earth, you should really care about life becoming multiplanetary and ultimately multistellar, because otherwise you're basically saying you're signing the sort of death warrant for all life as we know it. It's inevitable. And then there's also the various things that killed off the dinosaurs if you look at the fossil record, there have been 5 major extinctions that are sort of on the order of 80 to 90% of all creatures on Earth dying for a wide range of reasons. And then humans can also, where there's the World War III danger that other creatures didn't have, where we could do ourselves in by sort of misusing advanced technology and sort of just having some radioactive hellhole that's all that's left after World War III. So you could even characterize it potentially as which will come first, World War III or life becoming multiplanetary on Mars. And this is So.
Sorry, I was going to shift, but when you think about the importance of going to Mars versus solving critical energy and climate change problems here on Earth, obviously the effort with Tesla is related to sustainable energy. And I think going back to probably the 1950s, there were engineering designs around plasma fusion or fusion-based systems that have evolved to these plasma systems, to these tokamak systems. And every decade, it's like, hey, next decade we're going to have it. What's your point of view on where plasma fusion systems are? Are we going to have fusion energy this century, this decade? And does it create limitless energy where the electricity production goes up by 10,000-fold and the price of electricity drops by 10,000-fold? And then what does that world on Earth look like if that happens? So I guess the question is is that technology real? When does it happen? And what happens to the world here when and if that happens?
I'll answer that question, but then let me sort of point out what the actual issue is. If the question is is it possible to solve fusion energy? 100% yes, definitely, is for sure. So and really just using a tokamak style, which is basically a donut ring with electromagnets that control the plasma. The way to solve that is simply scale up the tokamak. Fusion is very much a scale based thing. You want to minimize your surface to volume ratio. So as you scale up a tokamak, you reduce your surface to volume ratio, which means the volume you have relative to the surface, you now have much more. You can basically have a hot zone in the center that's relatively far away from the walls, and more of a hot zone. So it's not, in my mind, a question as to whether fusion can work, but there is a question as to whether it is economically viable, and whether it is competitive with alternatives. I think the economic viability of fusion is a much bigger question, and I think the answer probably is that fusion is not competitive economically. I think that is. I would say it's probably not competitive economically by an order of magnitude.
Where does it break? Is it a materials breakdown, or where does it break down economically?
Well, so you can't just use normal hydrogen. You need to use deuterium and tritium, unusual forms of hydrogen. Helium-3. There are some other types of fusion that could be used. But these are just not, they're not like, there's not a lot of this raw material. It's quite difficult to get the raw material. So first you have to get the raw material. That's very, it's expensive raw material. And then it's not just about generating the energy. You've got to turn that energy into usable electricity. You can't just have a hot thing. Okay, so the hot thing has to translate to usable electricity. So I think you've got a cost of fuel issue, which is very significant. You've got to have a whole bunch of knockdowns from when you generate the heat to when you actually convert that into electricity. You've got some very difficult maintenance issues with a fusion reactor. And that should be then compared to alternatives. The sustainable energy alternatives that I think are overwhelmingly more competitive are solar energy, wind, geothermal, hydro, some tidal energy, but it's really primarily solar and wind. Now, and you can really say, like, why bother creating fusion on Earth when we have a gigantic fusion reactor in the sky that just works with zero maintenance, and it shows up every day?
Right. It's pretty consistent, yeah.
But Elon, can we scale to 1,000x or 100x our electricity production here using solar and other renewable sources?
Yes. So the amount of surface area you need to power the United States is remarkably tiny. So you need like basically roughly 100 miles by 100 miles of territory, and it obviously doesn't need to be in one place in the United States to power the United States. It's like a little corner of Texas or Utah, the entire country. And then if you could basically power you probably 10x the just with solar alone, without displacing anyone's home. Power an economy 10 times the size of the United States in the United States on land.
When energy prices,
if you extend that to water, because Earth is 70% water.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say, okay, now we could probably have a civilization that is 100 times as energy intensive as we currently have it.
And so what does that look like was the last part of my question, which is a world where energy costs are, say, let's 100 times cheaper than they are today, and we have 100 times more energy production capacity. What changes about civilization? What do we do differently, and what do we see change most kind of dramatically?
Well, currently we're not, because of just generally low birth rates almost worldwide. Civilization is not headed to have a population that is an order of magnitude greater than where we're currently. We're currently headed towards a population decline, and this is almost everywhere in the world. So, it basically seems as though as soon as you have like urbanization and education beyond a certain level and income beyond a certain level, birth rates plummet. And so as countries get wealthier, their birth rates plummet. It's somewhat counterintuitive because people will say like, well, it's too expensive to have a baby. Nope. The wealthier you are, the fewer kids you have. The more educated you are, the fewer kids you have. So it's the inverse. So I'm not sure who to use all that energy unless there's a significant change in the birth rate, or we have a very robot-oriented economy. So that's also possible. So if we've got a lot of four-wheeled robots in form of cars and androids, so humanoid robots, then you could certainly see that there'd be perhaps a need for an order of magnitude more energy. But it's not coming from the humans unless something major changes on the human birth rate level. This, by the way, is I think the biggest single threat to civilization right now is the.
Yeah. Why do you think societally people just make those decisions when they become more affluent? Is it that they just become more selfish, or there's more things for them to do and they have more money to spend on themselves, and they say, you know what, I don't want to have a large family. I want to, go to Coachella.
Yeah. Well, there is this like weird like mind virusy thing where some people think like having fewer kids is like better for the environment.
Yeah, that's crazy.
This total nonsense.
Nonsense.
The environment is going to be fine. They're going to be fine even if we doubled the size of the humans. And I know a lot about environmental stuff. So, we can't have civilization just dwindle into nothing. And Japan's a leading indicator here. Like Japan's population declined by 600,000 people last year. They had the lowest birth rate in history. It's pretty bad. So I don't know. And I think so. This one element of it is a lot of people just think that having kids is somehow bad for the environment. I want to be clear, it's not. It's essential for maintaining civilization, that we at least maintain our numbers. We don't necessarily need to grow dramatically, but at least let's not gradually dwindle away until civilization ends with us all in adult diapers and in a whimper. Like, we don't want civilization to end in adult diapers with a whimper. That would suck.
Kind of suck, yeah.
Bleak and sad.
Well, I mean, and you and I have had this conversation. I mean, in Japan, I had two people tell me when I was there, like, I think it's immoral to bring humans into the world. I mean, people have gotten very sad about the future. It's kind of crazy. The world's great. Life's awesome.
Yes. No, there's literally, I've heard many times, how can I bring a child into this terrible world? I'm like, have you read history? Because let me tell you, it was way worse back then. Okay.
Yeah. Now's a good time. Now's a good time to be born. Hey, listen, I know you're super busy, but I wanted to ask you about the move to Texas, because I've been thinking about it. Austin, California, I don't know, some senator told you to go fuck yourself, and we don't need you
I think there's been a couple senators who said that, actually.
Yeah, it seems to be turning into a bit of a trend. But how has building the Tesla Gigafactory, which I got to see in Austin a couple of weeks ago, and it was one of the most inspiring things I've ever seen. I mean, I don't know how many months it took to build there, but how long did it take to build that dreadnought? And then what would it have taken to build that in California under Gavin Newsom?
So we built the Giga Texas, which is the biggest factory in North America, I think possibly the biggest factory in the world. And it's 3 times the size of the Pentagon, to give you a sense of scale. Okay, this is friggin' big. It's weird. It's like so big, it's weird. I
was trying to find you in it, and I was trying to drive around, and it took me about 45 minutes to find you.
Yeah. No, you have to call, you can't find someone in the building. You have to call them on their cell phone and say, where are you? So, the building is just under a mile long, and we're actually going to extend it. It will be literally a mile long and about a quarter mile wide, and it's 80 feet tall. So it's just ridiculously big. And when you think about it, for a manufacturing situation, what are the two things that really define manufacturing competitiveness are economies of scale and technology. And so if you got an ace on economy, if you sort of maximize your ace level on technology and you maximize your ace level on scale, this is obviously going to be the most competitive situation. And that's why they're so friggin' giant. And a Giga Texas will go all the way from cell raw materials, like basically rail cars of cell raw materials coming in, and then forming the battery cell, then the battery pack, building the motor, casting. We also have introduced a major innovation, which is to cast the entire front third and rear third of the car as a single piece. I got this idea from toys, actually, because I was like, how do they make toys? Those are cheap. They just cast them. I was like, well, can you build a casting machine that big? And they're like, well, no one ever has. I'm like, are we breaking physics? No. Well, let's just ask them. And there were 6 major casting machine suppliers in the world, and 5 of them said no, and the 6th said maybe. I'm like, I'll take that as a yes.
Well, you wanted to do this for the Model 3, but it was just too soon, huh? And now it's almost there.
Yeah, actually, this partly comes from the Model 3, which is actually a fantastic car in many ways. But we were rightly criticized for an inefficient design for the front and rear body. Like Sandy Monroe, who I think is really has excellent from an engineering standpoint and really a very fair critic, he pistol whipped us for the design of the battery.
He ripped it apart and piece by piece told you why you suck. Yeah, and then he did the why and told you why you were awesome.
He took it apart and told us exactly why we sucked, and he was correct. And then, and I was like, Well, that's pretty embarrassing. So, no, he was complimentary of other parts of the car, but not the body design. And so it's like, okay, we're going to go from